Guys, so let's go ahead and take your Cornell notes for this week's lesson, okay? We're starting a new quarter, we're starting a new unit, and this unit will be called the Outsiders and Outcasts. So if you set up your Cornell notes into your three sections, A is just that big white space. You're going to write down the title, Outsiders and Outcast. And then section B is where the holes are in your paper. That's where we're going to write our terms, our questions, and other things that we will elaborate on and see. For those of you all who missed our class for whatever reason, you were absent, or I just did not get an opportunity to see your class because our schedule is a little bit different this week, here are your notes. These are the notes that we took in class. Make sure you have these notes written in Cornell note format so that you can still earn a classwork grade, even though I didn't get an opportunity to see you. So if we're looking at this particular slide, outsider is a term. We will put that in section B, and then you guys will put the definition and all of this information pertaining to outsider in section C. The next term is outcast. Outcast will be in section B, and you guys will write this information in section C. You will also write this information that's under our definition of an outcast in section C. This pertains to an outcast, but you will see this thought process or these terms overlap when we're talking about author's perspective, character's perspective, because we're dealing with perspective. Okay? So go ahead, pause the video, and take these notes. All right, so here is everyone's homework assignment. The first slide was for those who missed my class for whatever reason. You were not able to do the classwork grade. And now this is everyone's homework assignment. You guys still need to use this. You can still use the same Cornell notes that you started on, or if you want to make a new Cornell note sheet, that is perfectly fine with me because this is a different task, really. So we're going to talk a little bit about character development, plot progression, and story structure. So here's what I need for you to know. In literature, characters, plots, and story structures are closely interconnected. You see that word connected. They are intertwined. Think of your favorite jacket and how your jacket and the threads, the buttons, and all of those pieces work together to produce this beautiful piece of clothing. What you need to take notes of is that the choices that a character makes drives the plot. So if I were you in my Cornell notes, I will write maybe the word characters to the left in section B, and then I will write in section C, choices drive the plot forward. The character's choices drive the plot forward. In other words, the characters make a choice. When the character makes a choice, his choice or her choice creates an action. And that action will create an event. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in class in the upcoming weeks. The next thing you need to know is the author structure will reveal things about the character. It's going to reveal information about the character, and it is going to create a tension or mystery or suspense within us. So you need to know from this particular slide 3 things. 1, you need to know about the character's choices and how their choices drive the plot forward. You need to know about the author's structure and how that structure reveals information about the character and how it creates emotions within the reader. You also need to know what non-linear storytelling is, okay? So non-linear, you have the word line. A line is a straight line. So a line is something that's straight. Non-linear, it means it's not going in a straight line. Non-linear storytelling is basically when the event or the story is told out of chronological order. We don't have the first, second, third, or first this happened, next this happened, then this happened. We may start in the middle, it's called Emmaus. We may have a flashback, flash forward, or we may have a parallel. Parallel is two timelines. That's Romeo and Juliet. So you need to stop and make sure you have this information in Cornell note format. The next thing that you all need to know is up here. Oop. Characters have reasons for their actions. A character is just not doing what they're doing, or they're not. Little Red Riding Hood did not go to her grandmother's house for no reason. It was a motivation. She had a reason for that. So you also need to know that the choices that the character makes drive the plot. Again, we're repeating this because this is important for you to understand and comprehend the stories. The choices that a character makes is going to drive the plot forward. When we're talking about plot, we're talking about the events in the story. We need this thing to happen so that we can have a story. The next thing is conflicts or reactions to conflicts are often a resolve or a result of the choices the character made. They were supposed to be results. So, conflicts are results of the character's choices. And these things create other events. So one event leads to another event in the story. As you can see, I took a few images. If you are familiar with Avengers, we had to think about how the conflict that the Avengers had caused Tony Stark to make a choice, and in that choice, he created or he made another event happen, and the story kept going on and on and on. Without the snapping of the finger, we wouldn't have what? The next thing you need to have is characters can change over the course of the text. This is where development comes in. A character can develop, they can change. Think about a baby. A baby develops, they're not. You guys were once babies, but you're not wearing diapers anymore. No, you're not. You've developed. You learned about your body and how your body works. And so we should be able to see this development through certain pieces of the plot. We should see the exposition and the rise in action and the climax and the resolution. The exposition is the beginning of the story. It's basically where we meet our characters. We're getting that background information. The rise in action, and it should be rise in action, it should be by itself, are the events that build the story's tension. And the rise in action is where we get a lot of that conflict, okay? The climax is the most intense part of the story. It's where that main conflict is faced. It's the turning point. It's where we get the answers to our questions resolved. And then the next thing is the resolution. It's the end of the story. It's where we're wrapping things up and things settle down. What happened after Tony Stark snapped his finger? What happened after Little Red Riding Hood got to the house and saw the big bad wolf, and depending on what story, the woodsman came and heard to save Little Red? What happens? That's what we're talking about, okay? Now, here is where you're going to practice. This is part of your homework. First thing you need to do is make sure that you have the steps. These are the steps that's going to help us to determine how the character drives the plot. First thing we got to do is we always read and annotate. The next thing we need to do is look at how the protagonist is at the beginning. How do they start out? What are their traits? What are their beliefs? What are their goals? What are their weaknesses? After that, we're going to be able to identify conflicts or challenges that the protagonists face. And how does these conflicts, these challenges, create events? And then we're going to ask ourselves, does our protagonist really change over time? Do they become stronger? Do they become mature? Do they gain new understanding? And did they fail? And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to consider where the protagonist ends up compared to where they started. Again, this is the growth. We're looking for this progression. Where were they at the beginning of the story? Did they change towards the end of the story? What have they learned? What have they accomplished? So make sure you have these 5 steps in your Cornell notes, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to read our passage here. You're going to answer the questions. I do not want you to write the questions in your Cornell note. I do not want you to write the question in your Cornell notes because this will also be your entry task. And you need to be able to explain to me why you chose what you chose. All right? So make sure you have these steps in your Cornell notes. Make sure you have these terms in your Cornell notes with the definition. Make sure you have these terms in your Cornell notes with the definition. Make sure you know what nonlinear is. Make sure you understand that we're looking at the characters, the plot, and the structure because they're interconnected. And for those of you all who were not here or for whatever reason, make sure you have your outsider notes. Make sure you have these notes right here in Cornell notes. So I will be checking this. For some of you all, it's going to be 2 grades. For some of you all, it's going to be 1 grade. When you come to class, I'm going to check this. All right, sweethearts, have a good day.